All right, you ready?
Yep.
This is the first beer of the rest of our lives.
As long as it's not the last.
Jesus Christ! Welcome to Short Pour, the 1 Minute Beer Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Chris.
And I'm Brandon. Here's how the podcast will work. Each episode will be themed. Each one of us will bring one beer each to show, and the third beer is a wild card that will be provided by a friend, our wives, a guest, maybe even a listener that emails in a suggestion to shortpourpod@gmail.com. Or in today's case, taken from a random list we found on the internet.
For those 3 beers, we'll be reviewing them, and in that, we'll do a first reaction, some history, and make fun of online reviews. In honor of our first episode, the theme of today is our first beers.
All right. So I think my first beer is probably not a very common first beer, but if you remember, our dad drank this beer a ton during this time.
Yes.
So my first beer was actually a Newcastle Brown Ale.
Newcastle Brown Ale. Now, I know I've had this beer before because, again, Dad drank these all the time. He swore by them for, I think, a period of about 5 years. This was all he drank.
Yes, and I think it was like, honestly, I would go pretty close to daily. Like he had one.
Yeah. No, yes, it definitely was very, very frequently. So I know I've had this beer also already, although it wasn't my first. So even before, like, we taste it again, it's been a while for me, but I know that this is probably a hell of a first beer.
Yeah, I remember I did not finish the first one that I had. I drank maybe like 3/4 of the bottle, and that was it. All right, so we're doing a first taste?
Yeah, I'm pouring mine right now. Are you pouring yours?
Oh, I already poured it.
Oh, okay. I will say, this beer gets a nice head on it.
Yeah, I feel like mine went away like really quick though.
Yeah, it is dissipating pretty quickly.
It went away really fast.
It's also very carbonated, like on the sides of my glass. I don't know if that's the same for you, but I have a lot of bubbles on the sides of my glass, which I feel like normally I don't.
Yeah, I would say actually I don't really have a whole lot of lacing on here. Actually, something that is kind of note, they used to make them or produce them in clear glasses. I don't know if you remember that. It was like in a clear glass. It's one of the first ones ever produced in a clear glass, but the ones we got are actually from the brown glass, like the amber glass.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Now that you mention it, yeah, they were clear. I totally forgot. Do you know why they made that change?
No, I don't. A lot of people say it has to do with like what happens to the beer when it's exposed to like different elements. It's more protected in a brown glass, but I don't know.
Gotcha.
They went so long in the clear glass. I don't know if they cared about that or if they actually took that into account.
All right, so we ready for our first taste here?
Yep, I'm going.
All right, let's go.
Oh man, I can appreciate that so much more now than the first time I had it.
That's good.
That is still a good beer.
Like
That's a good dark beer.
It's been a few years since I've had one as well. Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. It's got like almost a little bit of a I don't want to say a smoky flavor, but there's definitely good depth of flavor without being super overbearing.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's like a lot of like malt and like caramel kind of taste to it.
Mm-hmm. Although somehow it's not heavy. Do you know what I mean?
No, yeah, I would agree. I guess it's kind of hard to know until after we go through like a couple. Then maybe you'd be like, okay, like I'm starting to fill up.
That's true.
But yeah, you're right. I think the initial taste isn't as heavy as you would expect for how dark it is.
It also, like, it definitely has like a good. It has an aftertaste, and I would say that it's good. But it's again, it's not very overbearing, and it doesn't like last a particularly long time. So I can see definitely how how Dad would just be like, "Oh yeah, I'll drink a couple of these," you know.
I'll drink these. Yeah, it was pretty often. All right, let's get into some history of this. So This was obviously made initially in Newcastle, England. Although, like, when I was researching it, they technically call it Newcastle upon Tyne, which I think is
Mhm.
kind of a weird distinction. Like, that's just the river that it sits on.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if there's multiple Newcastles or if it's like
Gotcha.
England's version of like Springfield, like there's just one in every
Yeah.
region. Or just like each time a
Gotcha.
newer castle gets built, we're like, we are actually
That's the
now
Newcastle
Newcastle.
now.
That's
Yeah.
slightly used
Yeah.
castle over there.
Look at me. Look at me.
I'm
I'm
new.
the Newcastle now.
um,
um, that's interesting because there must be a castle that's been built in Petaluma, California, and or Chicago, Illinois. Because that's where the ones that we have, that's where brewed and bottled in Petaluma, California, and Chicago, Illinois.
yeah, that was they got bought by Lagunitas. I'll actually I have a thing about that actually in just a little bit. So the initial recipe was made by Colonel Lieutenant Jim Porter in 1927. He had fought in World War One and then wanted to make a beer. And he worked with a chemist to develop this beer. He was trying to replicate the taste of another, and this one didn't match it, so he actually considered it a failure. Which is kind of weird because I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, wow. Well, yeah, that's crazy too, just because I guess it depends on what you're looking for. Because if he was trying to replicate a different beer, I mean, he could have been trying to replicate, like a light golden ale. So, like by
Yeah,
that
that's
metric,
true.
like, yeah, dude, this is a real piece of shit, man.
Yeah, we're way off, dude. Yeah, I don't know what the taste of the beer he was trying to replicate was. In the late 90s, this became the most widely distributed alcoholic beverage in the UK, which seems like a really big deal because obviously, like a common trope is that they drink a lot.
Mhm.
But then by the 2000s, the majority of their sales were from the US, which is when Dad would have been drinking it. So it makes sense why he had so many of these,
Yeah, he got swept up in the
and
wave.
he could buy them like in bulk from. I think he bought them in bulk from like Sam's Club.
Yeah, that's funny,
So he'd
dude.
buy like huge cases of them all the time.
Was Dad like a hipster for like craft beers then?
I think he was. But when they started expanding to like a lot of their sales were happening in the U.S., uh, Lagunitas actually purchased the rights to brew it, so that's why you see that the bottle says it's from Illinois or California, and it also says
Mhm.
above that Lagunitas. That's who makes or brews it now. A lot of people
Gotcha.
do not like the changes since they've taken over it, though.
Oh, really? So is this a different flavor profile than what Dad was drinking in the early
A lot of the
2000s?
reviews a lot of the reviews I looked at said that it's not as good as it used to be.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I wonder if some of that is because, like, I don't know, it doesn't hit as hard as what I remember, and it seems like what you remember as well. So I wonder if some of that is from just a lighter flavor overall.
Yeah, I think that's what it has to be. A lot of people said they didn't like the new taste, but I'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay, well, are we ready for the back of the bottle then?
I'm ready.
So it's interesting that you say Lagunitas because I was pretty sure about that as well because on the bottle now, where it says brewed and bottled, there's a parenthesis underneath it and it says, and seen a man about a dog at Lagunitas in California and Illinois. So kind of a nod, I guess, to Lagunitas inserting themselves there. Back of the bottle for this is brewed with a unique blend of pale and roasted malts with American hops. Newcastle Brown Ale is smooth, crisp, and slightly roasty. Not too sweet, not too bitter. Altogether, an uncommonly balanced brown ale. And honestly, um, this is no longer actually on the bottle. I had to go online to find that little description. But I will say that is a pretty apt description for what it is now.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good description, but I don't. Do you remember they had like those little like factoids on the back of the bottle, and it had like a star with like a number, and there were like I don't know 10 different facts, and like each bottle had like a different fact on the back. Do you remember any of that?
No, I don't. Let me look up some real quick though. Oh, geez, yeah. Somebody took like a old ass picture of a bottle that looks like it's been sitting in water for a long time. So it's like super wrinkled. You can't actually read it. But I see the fact 4, and then it says like name, but I can't read what
Dude,
the fact is.
I feel like that's like what happens whenever you go on a float trip. You just leave all the beer in there all day.
And then like you and the bottle are both the same amount of pruned by the time you get
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, but this would be a terrible float trip beer. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, yeah. This would be way too dark of like a and heavy of a float trip beer. I could not drink this like like all day. Well, let's get into some of the reviews then about this thing.
Okay, so I got a couple. We'll start with the bad one first. I gave it a 1 out of 5, and there was honestly quite a few of these, and they were all like pointing the finger at Lagunitas. But it says it pours a translucent brown with a weak, limp head that immediately vanishes. Nose is of barley, nutty malts, and faintly skunked hops. Nose is almost non-existent. This is more of a blessing than a curse. First taste is water. Water followed by a big sack kick of diacetyl. Mmm. Do you know what diacetyl is?
Oh, what is that?
It's like what they use for like a fake butter taste,
Oh,
like in like butterscotch or like fake popcorn butter.
oh, okay. Fake butter flavor.
Yeah. So it goes on from there. It's not entirely one-dimensional. In addition to the diacetyl, the next taste adds a skunk's ass to the water / butterscotch equation.
Oh my god! It doesn't. how, how many skunks' asses has this man tasted? How
Well,
can he know for
how
sure?
many Newcastles have they drank? Dude, it gets weirder. All right, so we personally have like talked a lot about like the whole like mouthfeel thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the worst way to describe it. Mouthfeel is flaccid and watery.
Oh, it just feels so
Why would you
flaccid in my
describe it
mouth.
like that? Yeah, why would you say it
Well,
like
I
that?
mean, I guess he's getting his point across of like it's not
Yeah,
pleasant.
yeah, and I guess there's like really nothing there. That's what he says. And then with that
Yeah.
sickening slickness of diacetyl.
Mm. I do not get that like artificial butter flavor that he's talking about. Although I will say, like I think that was one of my first comments. It is very like I guess it is very thin. Like it's not heavy. It's a lot lighter than you would think for the color that it pours.
Yeah. Some people said like not everyone can like pick out the diacetyl necessarily, but usually if you can't taste it, you can still feel it as like a like slick or almost like slimy kind of feeling, like residue left, I guess.
Hmm.
They end it with, "This is truly the worst tasting beer I've ingested. Holy gross. It finishes leaving your mouth dry yet slick with lingering rancid butter. This is an aftertaste, not a finish, an aftertaste. Gross, gross, gross." I, I thought it was pretty good.
I don't.
Not the review, the beer, not the beer. I thought the beer was
Yeah,
pretty good.
yeah, yeah. I was not as critical on this beer as that guy was. Although, if this was that guy's first beer, like hell of a first beer for him then, because I guess to him you're only gonna go up.
Yeah, I know, man. What a refined palate
Yeah,
if this is the first beer. All
yeah.
right, so the good review. All right, so I'll be honest. A lot of the good reviews basically just said something like, "This is my favorite beer. It's super good." Like they didn't go into any sort of
Yeah.
detail. I found one. This is probably a terrible way to start this podcast because this review is completely out of left field. But they gave it a 4.8 out of 5. I'm just gonna read through it. These are their words, not mine. "I'm a bottom fermenter, and when I seek bottom, I climb underground." And when I read that, I was like, I guess they know a
What?
lot more about making beer than I do. I don't know. "The dirt and clay taste better than the wispy little cloud poofs, and you feel a little closer to the brown people who started this ignorant race of human sauruses."
What?
Drinking is, after all, a method to kill or cleanse a bad day or a bum occurrence. Hell, it's even happy time for some elves. And it just goes really weird from here. But I'm a particularly strange dwarf with my tufted ears and need for gravy and sirloins and sausage. This is what Guinness would taste like if you didn't have to drink it with a fork. Brown gravy
What?
soda with brown gravy soda with chunks of squirrel mixed in. And it still gets weirder. The nutmeggy little squirrel you see hanging from a tree limb and eating all of your songbird's energy cakes and laughing as you steam from the inside of the window. Once you knock, he'll look and then be gone, and you're back to bird watching. Except that the little birds are twittering above your head and building a little shrine to tasty spirits. 4.8 out of 5.
Dude, this guy is very coherent with using a computer while on mushrooms.
That's what I was saying. I was like, this guy was going through some sort of experience.
Yeah. Now, that's a hell of a first beer. Like, if that was your experience and this was your first beer, whoa, that's incredibly life-changing. What's craziest to me in that review is that he stays fairly weirdly on topic about the beer. Like, for a while, he lost me there. And I was like, okay, he's just like talking about, random stuff now. But then he somehow makes it all still relevant to the beer. So, like, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain anything about that review.
I also love that.
A good review.
I want to know where he lost the 0.2 points out of it.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Like, what knocked it down from a 5?
Right, yeah.
Well, I don't know. He did say he was a particularly strange dwarf, so maybe the diacetyl got him or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Jesus.
Hey, could you imagine if at the end of all that, he wrapped it up by saying, plus they use too much diacetyl and I hate it.
Yeah, minus 0.2.
Thought.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think as far as first beers go, though, like the current version, it's not out of the realm of being like a crazy first beer.
Yeah, I think some of the like taste of it would kind of get lost on someone drinking beer like truly for the first time. Of just like, I don't know. I remember when I drank it, like I didn't like it. I couldn't pick out anything about it that I thought tasted like particularly good. So it's kind of like I don't know, I would say like it's like a double-edged sword of like, this is a good tasting beer, but to someone who has never tasted beer, it's probably too much.
Gotcha.
Right? Like, it's a good beer, but I don't know that you can appreciate it as a first beer.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess maybe this would be like, this is a good first like brown ale, I guess then.
Oh yeah. This would be a great intro to like dark beers. Or
Yeah.
darker, at least. It's not the darkest, but
yeah,
darker side.
I could see. I definitely also did pick up like the roastiness, which maybe I think I described it as like smoky earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see that being like off-putting to somebody who's not familiar with tasting beer on a regular basis. That being kind of like a weird thing of like, oh, why do you like to taste like burnt wood in your drink?
I love char.
Yeah.
And diacetyl.
Yeah, and fake butter. Do you remember like what your first beer experience like was? Like, how did you have your first beer? What was the scenario around it?
We were at the house and I drank a beer on the couch with Dad while we were watching a Royals baseball game.
And so, how old were you?
I was 21. I made it all the way.
So what was the context of like, he was just like...
I don't know if you remember, we went to California.
Yes.
And we were, I don't remember exactly why, but we were in California and and I had my birthday actually in California. And for some reason, like he couldn't get off work or he couldn't go, but he made me promise him that my first beer would be with him. So when I turned 21, we were all in California, and I remember they took us. We had like, of the kids, I was the oldest, so no one else could have gone to a bar necessarily. But we went to that Applebee's.
Yes.
I remember I didn't know what to order. I got a Long
Yes.
Island iced tea, and I started drinking it. And I remember people asked me if I liked it, and I just kept saying no. And finally, someone's like, "All right, well, let me just taste it really quick." And they taste it, and they're like, "Oh no, no, send this back. This is terrible." And I
It
had to
was
switch
it
out.
was Aunt Liz because Mom and Aunt Liz were like making fun of you. Like, oh, look at him.
Yeah.
He doesn't like alcohol. Look at him. And Aunt Liz was like, oh, it can't be that bad. Let me try it. She goes, ooh, They didn't make this
Yes.
right.
Yes, and they were like, "That is bad." We sent it back. I think I ended up just getting like a rum and coke or something,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Okay, that's fine." Yeah, my first actual drink. I was one of the few people that made it to 21, but I did not like it.
Mhm.
But no one else liked it either, so I guess that's
You
fine.
get a pass. Yeah. All right. So moving into mine then now. My first beer was a Boulevard Unfiltered Wheat.
Oh, nice. That again, I think is gonna be in the category of like that's a good beer. I don't know how much you appreciate it as a first beer though.
I liked it enough to keep going back.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I started enjoying beer a lot sooner than you did.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So I definitely had my first beer before I was 21. Don't tell the cops. I remember because you waited when you were 20 until you were 21. You like when I got to college, you like told me like it's not worth waiting. Like just go have fun, whatever. And I also know that at this point you didn't really like beer for a while because of I guess your first experience, with the Newcastle and stuff like that. But I know that you said that you really liked the unfiltered wheat. So my first beer, I don't know if you remember this, but this was because you were like, this should be your first beer.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
I remember telling you go ahead because when I got out of college, like I turned 21 late in college, and by the time I was ready to start partying, like all my friends were like over it, and so that's when I remember telling you like, dude, just go for it while you're there.
Yeah.
I don't remember just recommending this one specifically.
So yeah, Dad also made me like be like, well, your first beer should be with me, right? And so when I got to college, when I first started drinking, I also started with just like, I guess like mixed drinks, and that's pretty much all I really drank. And so I when I came back home for that first time, it was kind of like the cat was out of the bag that I had tried alcohol, and so Dad was like, well, let's have your first beer. And so you had suggested, you were like, oh, well, you should do unfiltered wheat. I really like that one. And so, yeah, we all three also had like an unfiltered wheat together. That was my first beer.
Did you actually finish all of yours?
I'll be honest, I don't really remember. So that makes me think that I did.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, I think that I would remember if I was like, didn't like it enough like you did to like not finish it. So I'm sure that I did finish it. And it was also one of those things too where I don't know why, but like even from the first, beer or whatever, like I think I've pretty much since I've tasted it, like I've usually liked beer. So there wasn't too much of like an adjustment period for me.
Yeah, I definitely had to acquire my taste. But Boulevard Wheat actually was keeping in theme of first. This was the first beer that I shotgunned.
Oh,
and I
God.
can say this is a terrible beer to shotgun.
Yeah.
Awful. Again, somehow this involved the Royals. We were at a Royals game, like just tailgating, and then we somehow, me and a couple friends, like one of my friends had mentioned that they'd never shotgunned a beer, and I was like, and I've never shotgunned a beer either, and all we had was Boulevard Wheat, so that's what we did.
Yeah, no, dude, that is not a good shotgunning beer.
It was not.
My first shotgunning beer was a Keystone Light, which is the perfect shotgunning beer.
Yeah.
Because it's just so unintrusive.
Yes. That's a good way to describe that.
Yeah, so I played on the Frisbee team in college, as you know, and for whatever reason, there's a lot of drinking that goes on in Frisbee, in collegiate Frisbee, and it was pretty common for party tournaments to, instead of a coin flip, you would have two players go out there and you shotgun a beer. So whichever team's player won the shotgunning race would get to choose who got disc first. So it was just kind of like a thing of like, once you got to the Frisbee team, they would always send a freshman out there or like a first year player out there. So like, they would just be like, all right, start practicing your shotguns because we want to get the Frisbee first. All right, are we ready to taste?
Yeah. Again, this is kind of a weird one in the sense like I know you and I have both like at least somewhat regularly continued to drink this.
Yeah, we've had a healthy
during our
amount
time.
of Boulevard Wheats, yes.
And obviously like being in Kansas City helps, but this will definitely not be my first actual taste.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into it. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's the kind of beer that I like. Like this is probably because it was my first beer, but this is like the cornerstone flavor profile of my baseline like beer preferences.
Yeah, I would agree. This definitely turned me on to
like
wheat beers.
This definitely turned me on.
Turned me onto wheat beers, and then whenever we go to I don't know, random breweries or something, I will usually check to see if they have a wheat beer because I'm usually going to try that.
Yeah, so my default too is kind of when I go to a new brewery or place like that, my default is to go to a wheat beer and or something with a citrus like flavor profile, which just has both of them.
Yes, it's a good beer. Again, I don't remember exactly when in my like, I don't know, beer journey when I actually started drinking them. But I know ever since I tried my first Boulevard Wheat, like I've just kept going. Like I continue to have it pretty regularly.
I will say also, this definitely has more flavor to it and more things going on than like a traditional light beer, which I feel like most people start with. So for a first beer, like this might be a little bit more intense than what somebody's maybe like ready for their first beer. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
That's what I'm saying. Of just like, it seems like the beers that are like actually good to beer drinkers probably aren't necessarily a great first beer because you can't really appreciate all of what's going on.
Yeah, I do know that. Like, I mean, the more I've drank beer and the longer I've been a beer drinker, like the more I can appreciate different things about the beer. So like I will say too, yeah, like I feel like a lot of us kind of forget our first beer is like it's like a pretty big like assault on your taste buds of like, oh whoa, there's like a lot going on. Like, oh god, it's carbonated and like maybe it tastes like a little fermented and it tastes like somehow like grass and bitter like all at once.
Yeah, I remember the first time I drank it, because like obviously like tons of people drink beer, and the first time, everyone always says the whole like it's an acquired taste. I remember the first time I drank it, I was like, why in the world? Why would I want to acquire that taste? That's gross. Yeah. I hate that.
Who wants to acquire this? Yeah.
And honestly, what got me was in college, like they were like the bars would just sell bottles of beer for $1. It was like Bud Light and stuff like that, but that was the only thing I could like afford to like get a whole bunch of. And so I eventually figured out how to like beer, I guess.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. I've like pretty much always liked it though.
I did not at first. I was an amaretto sour guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, that phase lasted way too long. I can say that.
I feel like that's a lot of people's experience though, of like a lot of people say like, oh, it's an acquired taste, which tells me that a lot of people have to kind of build up to appreciating it. But let's get into the history of it. So the Boulevard Brewing Company was started by John McDonald, and in the summer of 1984, he was on vacation in Europe, and he tried a bunch of Belgian beers while he was over there. He came back to the States. He was a carpenter for years, and he ended up in Kansas City, Missouri. And he just like couldn't get the German beers like out of his head, and so he decided to start trying to become like a home brewer. He, I guess, fell in love with it because he ended up like selling his house and everything, and he bought a building to start a brewery in. which was on Southwest Boulevard in Kansas City. And so I guess for a while he had like his carpentry business like in a corner. And so that's what kind of helped like sustain him to getting the brewery up and running. He established the brewery officially in 1988, but they didn't actually produce their first keg until 1989. The first Boulevard Brewing Company keg was actually the Boulevard Pale Ale. However, the following year in 1990 is when he came out with the Boulevard Unfiltered Wheat. And both of those beers have been like their top two sellers kind of interchanging ever since. Like even till today, like those are their top two.
Yeah, I can see that. Those are both, like, I mean, obviously being in Kansas City, but pretty much any bar has both of those beers readily available for you.
Yeah, and kind of transitioning into the back of the bottle between like history and back of bottle. The back of the bottle for the unfiltered wheat is unfiltered wheat beer set the stage for a craft beer revolution. First brewed in 1990, unfiltered wheat has seen the fads come and go while retaining the genuine character that has made it the most beloved craft beer in the region. This fresh look gives prominence to the refreshing, citrusy, easy drinking nature of unfiltered wheat. The craft beer landscape will continue to grow and evolve, and unfiltered wheat beer will continue to be there with you. Tried and true, classic since the beginning. It is interesting to think, though, kind of like going back to the Newcastle, like, I guess today, like, I don't really think of unfiltered wheat as a craft beer because it's so widely available, and it's a pretty big beer now. But it is crazy to think that, like, yes, this really did kind of start off, it was at the beginning of that trend of, like, craft beers, small batch, trying some new things in the U.S. that wasn't just a Pilsner.
I don't know if you remember when we were younger, but Dad used to always talk about, like, their time in Germany, how each town had, like, their own little beers, and how you could go get, like, all these different kinds of beers and then drive, 20 minutes to the next town to get, like, completely different style of beer there. But yeah, I guess just going back, like, Dad was into craft beers, like, way before it became, like, really blew up.
Before it was cool. He was into craft beer before it was cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also wonder, like, if our perspective of it is kind of changed because we are obviously in Kansas City where it's, headquartered. But, I mean, can you go to, like, random bars and do most bars in, like, Chicago have Boulevard Wheat? I have no idea. Obviously, I'm sure there's bars that serve it, but I don't know, like, I don't know. Obviously, we mostly go to bars here. So I don't know how it, like, kind of translates throughout other parts of the country.
Yeah, let me look that up, actually. That's an interesting question.
I know I was with some friends, and we went to California, and I remember I ordered a Boulevard Wheat, and they all, like, gave me shit about it. And they're like, dude, you can get that anytime when you're at home. Why did you get that? And I was like, because it's good. Like, why would I not?
Because I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Online, it says, on their website, it says that Boulevard beers are distributed, currently sold in 45 states, and also available in Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden.
Man, can you imagine? I don't know what states they are, but whatever states they decided, we would rather send this all the way to Norway
instead of you.
Instead
of the state. Yeah, that's true. That is pretty funny to think about, yeah.
All right, I'm going to text my friend that lives in Chicago and see how often you can get Boulevard Wheat in a random bar there.
Oh, I'm sure in Chicago they have it.
I'm sure they do, but obviously, like, it's just not here, so I'm just wanting to see somewhere else.
That is true. It is like a staple in Kansas City now. Like, if you go into a bar, like, they are going to have a Boulevard beer. Usually they'll for sure have the Boulevard Wheat. They'll usually have the Boulevard Pale Ale, and then they'll usually have one or more of their other Stackhouse.
Yeah, some random seasonal or something, yeah.
Yeah, one of their Stackhouse brews, but...
Yeah, actually, I can't think of a place here where you can't get it. Even, like, the chain restaurants have it.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get into some reviews. We got a bad review, a 1.8 out of 5.
Ooh.
They give a disclaimer at the top. Had a 12-ounce bottle. about a year past its freshness date.
Okay.
They're gonna go on to rip this beer apart. The beer was a sort of hazy yellow, which that's exactly what we
Yes.
with
Yep.
no real head to speak of. It's little bit retreating rather quickly. Taste-wise, it was an overly simple wheat beer with citrus hints that were too mild to give the beer any real worth. It is drinkable if nothing better is on hand, as was the case last night when I tried this, but is otherwise undeserving of your time and money. It was a year.
Well,
I don't
also,
understand why you would review it based on that.
his like negatives. He's like, it's just wheat and citrus. I'm like, I don't see the problem there, brother. Like
Yeah, that's also like
that's all right with me.
I feel like there are a ton of beers that build their whole thing on we're just wheat and citrus.
There's beers that build their whole thing on less.
That's true.
Yeah, like I finished mine already.
I'm super close to mine being done.
Yeah, it's good. It's just good. I do not agree with that guy, but also, yeah, like you said, how can you like? I'm sure like the head issue is probably because it was so far past its expiration date or its freshness date.
Right. I just don't understand why. Like, what did you expect? It was
I
a
don't.
year. It was a year past. That's a substantial amount of time.
I also want to know like what dire situation this man found himself in to where he was like, "All right, I'm doing it. I've got this one fucking unfiltered wheat sitting in my fridge that I've been holding on to for worst case scenario, and this is it." Why did he have that on hand? Then, if he, you know what I
Well,
mean?
and also, what was his stock of beer for the last year that he was able to just ignore the Boulevard Wheat that
Yeah,
long?
true.
I got an update on the Chicago question.
Oh, okay.
He says, probably not common.
Who was this?
Holden.
Okay, okay.
Him and his friends, I know they go to a bunch of breweries up there, but I honestly I don't know how often like they actually like just go out to like regular bar in Chicago. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, hey, that's our Chicago correspondent Holden now.
Yeah, dude, I'm gonna bring him into the show without him.
Holden on the streets. We need
Yeah,
to
holding on the streets.
we need to
We'll make
send him out
t-shirts.
there. We need to send him out there on like a on the streets just asking people questions.
Dude, the thing is, he is the last person to do it.
I know.
Like of all my friends, I can think of so many more that would actually go do that, and he is not the one. All right, I do have plenty of good reviews. We'll go with one. It's a pretty simple 5 out of 5. Boulevard Wheat served draft is one of the finest beers around. In a bottle, it's still satisfying, but it needs to be tried draft to appreciate the flavor. It is the perfect drink to accompany a plate of Kansas City barbecue. Unfortunately, they don't ship it beyond the Midwest. I can't confirm or deny that last part, but I will say this is a great beer for barbecue.
I will also say yes. I'm sure like almost every beer is probably it's probably going to be a better draft. Like that's just any beer. It's stored the right way. It's at the perfect like CO2 level. Everything is like optimal still. But yes, I will say that the draft version of this is a little bit more full bodied, and it does have a deeper depth of flavor to it. It's not anything crazy. It's just like it is all of these like flavors that we've already described now are just like a little more enhanced. It's just more of them.
Right. Yeah, I would agree.
So as a first beer, this was my first beer. I thought it was a really good first beer. It's got good. It's got definitely some more flavor there than a traditional like light pilsner. But there is nothing about this beer that is offensive or too drastically like crazy or experimental. It is a really, really solid beer. So for a first beer, I think it's a really, really good first beer.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it also has like a really great intro into like a beer taste without maybe some of the like heaviness or bitterness that you can get with others.
I would hope that you think this is a good first beer because you were literally the one that suggested it.
Hey
I
man,
know
I
you
just told
said
you it was a good beer. I didn't know if it would be a good first beer. I just knew it was a good beer.
I'd say I know you said you didn't remember if that was you, or be like, yeah, you 100% were like, you should do Boulevard Wheat.
Wait, so what were we doing? Like when did we all do that?
I'm pretty sure we were just like at the house. I don't remember like super specifics, but I think we were just like at the house, at the old house, obviously. And I'd come back. It was when you had just started teaching, and so you were like living with them. I had come back probably for that like first like semester break, first semester of college, and after mom was disappointed with me for trying alcohol before I was 21. We had kind of been like, okay, well, he's already had it, so like let's try a beer or whatever. And I don't know. I think it was just kind of a regular night, regular evening, and Dad made the same kind of deal with me that he made with you of like, I want your first beer to be with me. So I think we just like kind of like went out and like got some. I'm sure we probably went to Thriftway even for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Macalusos.
Yeah, I'm sure that we just went to like the little grocery store and then like came back, and I think I definitely remember that it was at night though, and it was like after it was already like dark, and we just kind of, I'm sure we probably sat or stood on like the back patio and just like drank the beer, and that was about it.
We weren't like watching a game or anything?
I don't remember, to be honest. That was, I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta realize like that was several thousand beers ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, no idea anymore. And mine
Yeah, I
wasn't
guess.
mine wasn't as like offensive as yours because you probably remember yours super well because like you didn't like it. I don't remember mine a whole lot because like I enjoyed it and I continued to just build on it. So it didn't like
Well,
really like super
I
stand
mostly
out.
remember the look of disappointment on his face when I handed him the rest of it and said, "Can you finish this?"
Uh, I'm sure that was probably some motivation for me to. I'm sure
Yeah.
that he probably was like, "You better finish that."
Yeah. Yeah, oh man, yeah, I couldn't do it. I don't know why. I just could not finish it. All right, we're moving on to beer number 3.
All right, yeah. So now we'll move on to beer number 3. And beer number 3, we got off of a website. What was the list that we found this on?
Oh man. We just Googled most common first beer and we clicked like one of the first 2 links.
Yeah, it
We
was
put
like
like minimal research into this.
I think it was a ranking of the best first beers. I have no
Yeah.
idea what their criteria was. I have no idea what their testing was. But I know for a fact that this list's number 1 beer was Coors Light, baby.
Yes, it was.
So I'm gonna go ahead and pour this thing. Oh
All
God.
right, yeah, I just poured mine. Yeah, if I'm being honest, we probably should have done this one first.
Yeah. No, this is gonna taste like nothing now.
This is going to be a, a major letdown from where we were.
If okay, between the first 2 beers we had, I believe one negative reviewer for the Newcastle said that the Newcastle was like a skunk's ass, and another bad reviewer for the Unfiltered Wheat said that the head disappeared immediately. Now, if they were to have this Coors Light in front of them, they would be absolutely appalled because this does smell kind of skunky, and that head lasted maybe half a second.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I mean, I think we know what we're getting into with Coors Light, but
There's nothing to this thing.
yeah, there's not much going on. And you know what? I will say it has its place.
Let's get into the first taste.
All right, here we go. Yep.
If I'm being critical of it, it's not like the worst thing in the world. Is it good? Not really. Is it something? Yeah. It's something that I can drink. And I'm not like mad about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a light beer.
This is a beer that you can just like kind of have and be like doing something else and be like, yeah, I'm drinking a beer and I'm like not mad about that
Yep. Yeah, I'm never gonna like turn one down.
if it's free. Yeah,
Yeah, yes, okay, that should go without saying.
I do remember that when we were growing up, one of mom's work friends like swore by Coors Light, and they did like a work event, and she brought Coors Light, and I remember on the way home or like after the event, Dad was like, I don't know how they drink that shit. That stuff is so fucking bad. And like they were like making fun of her for liking Coors Light. And after she left that job, anytime they brought her up, it was always like a punching bag moment of be like, "Oh yeah, well she was a Coors right. She was a Coors Light drinker, so she's a
Dude, the
fucking
wild part
idiot."
the wild part is that I know for a fact Dad went through a Bush Light phase. So I don't know who he's complaining about.
Okay, I will say I do prefer Bush Light.
Over Coors?
Yeah, there's something even less offensive about Bush Light.
Well, yeah.
Coors Light
Yeah,
it is a little bit skunky.
it's got something to it, yeah.
Now, my mountains were blue still when I poured, which is what they recommend,
As for mine.
and it is still a little bit skunky.
We got some history for it. When do you think the first Coors Light was introduced?
62.
1962?
Yeah.
You're fairly close. 1978.
Oh,
It came
okay.
out to compete with Miller Lite as like the quote unquote diet beer.
Yes.
So Coors has like kind of like an interesting brewing history because they had like the Coors Banquet, which was initially marketed as like the light beer, at least like for its time.
Mm-hmm.
But then after World War II, they stopped doing that whole thing because they were afraid it was going to get branded as like a girl's beer for being lighter and like less calories.
Yeah.
So they like kind of nixed that for a while, and then they eventually brought in Coors Light. So here's like I didn't like go too much into the history. I just looked up like some like kind of weird facts about them, I guess. This one honestly I think is the most shocking. In 2005, Coors Light won a silver medal in the Great American Beer Festival in the American Style Light Lager category. And I don't know, like in my head I just think that's kind of weird because I'm like, dude, like did you guys didn't know about Coors Light?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like I guess I assume the brewing company entered it, but I could just picture like a random festival where like some guy showed up with like a Coors Light. It was like, this is my beer, and I want to enter it.
And it's just Coors Light.
Yeah, and it was just a Coors Light like you bought from the grocery store. But also, I'm like, they only won that. They only won the medal one time in 2005, and then just kind of went away. I guess I don't know. I didn't realize there was a big competition in that category.
Dude, I am hiccuping to all hell right now.
Dude, that's weird because it's normally me.
This is an unforeseen issue with recording while we're drinking beer. I am hiccuping uncontrollably at the
Jeez.
moment. Oh my
Jeez. All right. Another thing with them, they got in trouble with advertisements in 2013, and they ended up being referred to the Federal Trade Commission. They had ads that said, "The world's most refreshing can, beer on the inside, science on the outside, and smoother, more refreshing pour." Yeah, I guess people were like mad because it implied that somehow the beer can was more technologically superior and able to make the drink better. People got mad about that. They had to discontinue the ads.
Was Coors the one that had the like slightly different can opening and was like when you pour it, it allows like the beer to flow better, and so that's why that's what they were saying was the science.
Yes, they did do that. Yeah, but also some of it, like I don't know, world's most refreshing can. Like I feel like there's so many places that are like, world's best barbecue or world's
world's greatest cup of coffee.
And I thought it was just Yeah, it's just an ad. Like, obviously, no one's out here ranking them each individual one.
Yeah, well, it's also all like completely subjective too. I don't think anybody
Yes.
would agree that Coors is at the top of any sort of like list like that, other than apparently first beer.
Yep.
But yeah, it's like there's got to come with like an idea that it's like a subjective, like just marketing thing. Good lord, dude, are you hearing the
Your
hiccups?
hiccups are bad. Yeah, they're bad.
I'm telling you, man, I normally don't hiccup this bad, and it's crazy.
Oh yeah. Yep. You want to hit us with the back of the bottle?
All right, so Coors does not have a real blurb on the back of their bottle.
Wait, hold on. Actually, I feel like the name is like pronounced differently for different people.
Coors?
Because I say Coors, and I feel like you're saying like Coors.
Yeah, you say Coors?
Coors.
Coors. I say Coors.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You definitely have a W in yours.
Yeah, there's two O's.
Coors.
Coors.
Yeah, no, they're different, man. I don't know which one's
you're
right.
Yeah, I don't know either. You're right though. Yeah. God damn it. We are saying it differently though. So, Coors does not have a real back of the bottle blurb, but they do have cliff notes.
Okay.
So they have cold filtered for a bright appearance, cold lagered below freezing for a lighter, crisper taste, cold packaged for peak refreshment. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies.
Oh hell yeah.
See, my thing is, I think that the people at Coors know that their product doesn't necessarily taste the best. So they're like, all right, if we can trick these people into just drinking it as cold as fucking possible, they won't know the difference.
As close to ice. Yeah.
They won't be able to tell.
And we'll tell them that the can makes it taste better. Watch.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting experience looking up reviews for Coors Light because it's just not the beer you think about reviewing. So we'll start off with the bad, 1 out of 5. And they preface it with a similar thing. I don't usually bother reviewing beers that I despise. I don't really see the point. But I figured I should review at least one so I knew what it felt like to totally bash a beer. Here it goes. This is a bad beer. Colorless, flavorless, odorless. Much like carbon monoxide, you should try and avoid it at all costs.
Jesus!
Honestly, that's not a bad description. Lagers usually benefit from being extremely cold. This one almost evaporates when extremely cold, and as it warms up, well, let's just say it would be better if it did evaporate. I'll never understand why this beer is so popular. Never.
Did Dad write this review?
I don't know, man. I don't know who wrote it.
Because I know that, yeah, that was about what he thought about this back in the day.
Yeah.
He hated Coors. He hated Coors Light.
Yeah, he was not a fan, and neither was this person. But we have a 5 out of 5, and I love this review because this guy put so much passion into this review, and it did not need it. I'm gonna be honest. There's not much more to life than sipping on a Coors. The electric blue color that the can embraces when cold as the Rocky Mountains is not to be taken lightly. It's an invitation. However, she's a seductive mistress, as each savory and refreshing sip, or gulp, only serves to tantalize and bring the experience closer to climax.
Oh, God.
Unlike some experiences, there's no waiting time in between rounds. And that's to everyone's benefit, as you'll need more than one to really appreciate the love that goes into each individual handcrafted can. Mr. Coors, you've got a fan in me.
Oh, my God, dude. This guy's about like you were.
I assume it was Randy Newman that wrote this.
Yeah, sitting there at his piano drinking a Coors.
In me. You got a fan.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's some dedication there. Now I will say, like Mom's old work friend, like this is some people's daily driver. Like this is just what their default go-to is.
Yeah, that's true.
So for some people, obviously, like they're doing something right.
I think Patrick Mahomes drinks a lot of Coors Light.
That's insane to me.
Well, I don't know if he drinks a lot, but
Yeah, on the opposite.
whenever they're partying, he drinks a lot. Yeah, of Coors Light.
So to me, Coors Light is a pretty solid like shower beer. Just something to fucking take in there and drink and be like, oh yeah, I just need a beer right now.
Yeah.
To go as far as that guy did in the review, there's no way that this dude's like ultimate point in life is just sitting there sipping on a Coors. If it is, kudos to him because like he has the key to happiness for $8.99 at the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like an orgasmic experience for him.
Yeah, what did you say earlier with the Newcastle? You were like, yeah, I'm sitting here and like hard or something.
No, it was when I said it turned me on to dark beers.
It turned you on. Yeah, this guy is feeling about Coors like you felt about the Newcastle earlier where it turned him on.
You thought I said that was hard?
Sitting there hard.
Man, this beer really makes me hard.
I knew it was something in the realm. I don't know.
Oh my god.
So, as a first beer though, where do you come down on it?
Oh, man, again, so I think it's like this weird first beer paradox where like the beers that actually taste good aren't good first, and the beers that don't taste as good are actually better first because there's not a whole lot going on to it.
No,
at least not as much as like the others, right? I mean, it's cheap, it's readily available. It's a light beer. Like I assume this is a lot of people's first beer experience. But it's interesting how you just kind of like graduate past that like fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think that this is a good first beer in the sense that like there really is nowhere to go but up from here.
Yeah.
Because even though there's not a whole lot going on, that also means that there's like nothing like good there's nothing like good going on.
Yeah.
So if you were to taste a different beer like like an Unfiltered Wheat or the Newcastle after the Coors, it would be like, whoa, okay. Now there is a definite flavor appearing.
Right.
Rather over the Coors Light.
Right. Yeah. So I guess honestly, I guess it should be a like great first beer. I'm just like, if you got through this, just wait till you see what else we got.
Oh shit, dude! I think we're running a little bit long.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed what you're hearing right now, please refer us to a friend, see what they think about it, and maybe you can enjoy a beer with them.
And while you're enjoying a beer, you could also consider giving us a rating.
Maybe a 5-star rating if you're so inclined.
Yeah, 5 would be good. Hey, we'd also take a 4.8, like the Newcastle.
What was the one where the dude was talking about fucking dwarves and elves?
Hey, that dwarf guy was a 5 out of 5, man.
Hell yeah, dude. If you got a dwarf or elf-like experience while listening to this podcast, you might be giving us a 5-star review.
If you are a dwarf with tufted ears, please give us a 5 out of 5.
So until next time, whether you pour short
or pour long, always finish